Welcome to the Battle Buddy Podcast with Keith McKeever.
Hey there, welcome back to another episode of the Battle Buddy Podcast. I have Lindsay Hinger with me, and we are going to discuss something that everybody needs to pay attention to today. It's finding that balance, right? You know, whether you're an entrepreneur or you just work, well, hopefully you're working right now, and you've got that balance point that you're trying to get to. I think it's something we all try to achieve. So we're going to kind of talk a little bit about entrepreneurship and business, but also finding that balance point. You know, it's going to be different for all of us. So without further ado, Lindsay, welcome to the Battle Buddy Podcast.
Thank you so much, Keith, for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. You know, best part about having a podcast, I get to talk to a lot of interesting people and we get to talk about a lot of interesting topics. And this is one, like I just said, like everybody has this different point that's going to work for them for whatever that balance is, you know, and it's not an easy thing, I think, to pinpoint, you know, and some people have found it better than others. You know, it takes a lot of soul searching and reflection, I think. But before we get all into that, go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit. What's your military story? Like who was little Lindsay and how'd you end up in the military? What'd you do there?
Oh goodness. That could be like hours long. Little Lindsay. Well, let's see. I'll go with a truncated version, including the military. So I had to pay for college, at least half of it, according to my parents. So I went ahead and looked for scholarships, and I found an Air Force ROTC scholarship. My parents encouraged me to go into the Air Force instead of the other branches because they were both in the Air Force briefly, and they knew that the officers in the Air Force were treated better than most.
Smart parents.
I get that reaction from everyone that I say that to. So they must have been right. I know that from my experience, I was treated well. So I definitely can subscribe to that information. So I went into the Air Force after going to UNC Chapel Hill. I did the ROTC program there in 2000 to 2004, which seems like forever ago, but that's when I went into the Air Force, was 2004.
That was a few years ago.
It was.
It is hard to think about that, you know, how long ago that was.
I know.
It's a long time ago.
You know,
I went in 2006, you know, and that was after 2 years of college for me.
A friend of mine and I were talking about how we've grown up, and we weren't even talking about growing up to be like 20 years old. We're talking about growing up from 20 years old to 40 years old. You know, it's crazy how if you're doing it right, you never stop growing. But
there's a lot of growth that can happen in that time frame, but it's weird because you look at it and you're like, well, that wasn't really that long ago. And if you look at, you know, human life expectancy here in the United States, I'll just throw some random numbers out, but I think the life expectancy is somewhere in like upper 70s, somewhere like that, right? It's like, wow, if you're, you know, mid 30s to 40, you know, somewhere in there in our age ranges, that's a lot of life left to live.
That is
like
so much.
You know, it's kind of crazy to think about.
It is. So it was only a tiny portion of my overall life really was the Air Force. And I was in it for actually 2 years, whereas most people obviously were in for longer. The way that happened was the years that I got into the Air Force, they had over-recruited. So 2 years into being active duty, they went and asked a bunch of junior officers, hey, you want to get out scot-free? And I raised my hand and said, okay, I'll volunteer. So I had undiagnosed depression at the time. And my mom had been sick the whole time that I was away in the Air Force. So there was a lot going on personally that made me want to leave. And I will never say that I regret it because that would just give somebody the satisfaction. But it is a decision that I still question to this day. And that was 2006.
It's understandable why you would get out though.
Yeah.
You know, you got some things there. But I'm kind of curious to follow that up because, you know, transition is something that everybody has to go through. Do you think your transition was easier because you were only in for 2 years? Do you think that the time frame of that would make it easier?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the biggest changes for me were actually going into the Air Force, obviously, going from a college situation into the military, into, okay, so let me kind of back up a little bit. This is how my graduation went from college. It was Saturday, commission into the Air Force. Sunday, graduate college. Next Saturday, get married. 2 months from then, moved to Hawaii. And so all of those life changes happened so quickly. And I'm being a professional for the first time and not doing anything theatrical, which was my background until I graduated high school, believe it or not. And I had to act like a completely different person. So for me, the transition into the military was way, way more difficult. Getting back out was easy for me. It was just stepping back out of the Air Force. It wasn't coming back into the civilian workforce that I'd never been a part of. I had never been a part of a workforce to begin with. So I had only 2 years of working at all.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Not much of a benchmark to really go off of there.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I felt the same way after getting out of 5.5 years, because I had a job in college. Well, I mean, I had jobs in high school, just minimum wage jobs, working at a restaurant, working at a grocery store, stuff like that. But I had worked for like 3 months between getting my associate's degree and enlisting in the Air Force. And so I was only doing like 25, 30 hours a week. It wasn't even full time. I was still living at home with my parents because I had great parents like that. But yeah, it's weird. You transition out and all of a sudden you're in the civilian world where all of your peers have been working for X amount of years. And now you got to try to figure out, you're starting at the same point as the people that are getting out of college at the same time. It's kind of a weird situation. It's like that time just disappears in some ways. Like it never disappears from your mind, but it disappears from your experiences. But you have different experiences, so I guess it balances out one way or another.
Definitely. In a way, I kind of professionally went backwards. And my husband, my ex-husband, he gave me a lot of junk for it because basically, coming in as an officer, you're a manager. And so you're put in charge of all these people who know how to do their job way better than you know how to do yours. And I didn't like that feeling. I didn't like not knowing what I was talking about when I was talking to people, when I was telling people what to do. I obviously had the utmost respect for people who had been in their position for a long time and treated me with respect. Even though I was technically their leader. But I just did not like that dynamic. And so when I left, I had to start from the beginning in my logistics career instead. So I went from being a manager to being a specialist. And the hit financially was huge. And I mean, if you care about status, that also changed quite a bit. But since when I did leave the Air Force, though, I really had to crawl back up the chain, in logistics.
Yeah. Do you think that's been a bad thing in some ways? I mean, I know the financial hit, obviously, at the beginning and the status and all that stuff, but to go back to doing a different side of things, has it been any kind of benefit there?
I don't regret it because I agree with myself that I don't like being in charge of people when I don't know what I'm talking about. It's just not ideal to me. So I lead a small group now, and it's a group who helped me run a company that I started from scratch. And so obviously I know the ins and outs, and I can lead that. I like that.
It's a lot easier to lead when it's a lot easier to lead when you've got you got all that knowledge and all that experience behind you.
Right.
Because, as when we first talked, we were kind of sharing stories, I think I was harassing you a little bit about being an officer and how young lieutenants, like, for at least the first year, have no clue what they're doing.
Right.
It's like then it kind of things finally click as they get through some schooling and have the master sergeants and seniors and the chiefs take them under their wing a little bit. But it's different way.
I don't know why this reminded me of this story, but I had so my squadron commander. I was only in one squadron the whole time, and I did not like my squadron commander. I thought that he was a pretty poor leader. And
unfortunately, it's kind of par for the course, I think.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. He was in charge of a logistics squadron, but he was a pilot with no logistics experience. And we don't need to get into that part. But
I think that says enough right there. That's totally understandable. Everybody, all listeners will know exactly what. Take a picture. You can probably picture somebody in their head, when they're thinking about that one.
So I took a tour of the squadron with him because he was brand new when I was brand new. And I remember he quizzed me on what a Tommy lift was. And I didn't know. I was 21 years old, never seen any equipment before. It's certainly not a freaking Tommy lift. How would I know that?
It's like, gee, don't you realize I'm just as clueless as you are?
Yeah. And then, every problem that he saw on our little tour, he was like, well, Lindsay, how do you think we should solve this? And I'm like, I don't know, and I remember he said, lieutenants need to have ideas. You just need to have ideas. Why don't you have ideas? And ever since then, I have come up with so many ideas, and I always think about him, and I'm like, screw you. Here's another idea.
Yeah. Screw you, but thanks for the motivation, right?
Exactly. He totally motivated me, but I won't let him know that. But
there's nothing like the bad leaders to teach you very valuable lessons. I had a few of them. I will say, in my experience, most of them weren't officers. Most of them, for me, were senior enlisted.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just really bad senior NCOs. I hate to say it, but the old crusty senior NCO of yesteryear. Now, this is me saying this back in the mid 2000s, right? These are the guys who grew up when smoking in the building was okay.
Yeah.
And, just a different way of doing things.
Driving drunk is okay as long as
the
you
guys
don't get caught.
I'm sure the guys that I was in with that are now master sergeants, I mean, they probably have young guys looking at them kind of the same way too. You're just an old school master sergeant. But most people were either average or decent leaders. Some were exceptional, but some of them were bad. Just bad influences. And there's nothing like the guys and gals that are doing questionable ethical things. You hear the stories of the people in positions of power who are helping people along through personal favors. Use your imagination, whatever that could be. Just examples like that of just things that you hear through the grapevine that this person's getting away with that because of this or that. And I think once you get something like that, it's pretty good, clear indicator that there's some problems with that leader. And there's one or two in every unit.
Oh, go ahead. What'd you say?
There's a couple in every unit. Unfortunately, you just got to be able to recognize who they are and steer clear the best you can.
Yeah. What kills me are the leaders who let toxic masculinity run their unit and allow women to be marginalized as a habit. That's a great way to breed some abuse. And I think a lot of leaders need to wake up to that. That it starts out innocent and it's usually a joke with a little bit of truth, and then there's more joking, and then there's more marginalization, and then it just gets worse and worse.
One little story, one seed of a story can spread into a wildfire before you know it. It's crazy. I
was so lucky because I don't know how I got away with it, but somehow I did not get a lot of grief for being a woman. I don't know if it's because I held the attitude that I'm just going to be as professional as possible and respectful as possible, but that also meant that I probably came off pretty stuck up, which is fine. I think I'd rather have been seen as a stuck up officer than someone that could be rolled over. So I accomplished what I was set out to do.
Yeah, that's good for you that you didn't have problems, because unfortunately too many women, and this is getting on a soapbox, but so many women have different problems, and it's probably worse in some branches versus others. But I had a guest on that released this year, and I'm trying to remember exactly what she said, but she had a drill instructor kind of tell her that as the female coming into the military, you're going to have to fill like one of 3 different hats. You're going to have to be the bitch, the slut, or I can't remember whatever the other one was. But it was really eye-opening when she kind of mentioned that to me. I was like, yeah. I mean, because I was Air Force Security Forces, we did have women in our units, very common, probably along the same percentage as Air Force wide. But that was kind of the philosophy. Like, you got brand new airmen in from tech school, and that toxic masculinity stuff happened, and people would start talking. The attractive one gets labeled as a slut immediately. Mm-hmm. You know, it's and that judging of somebody just off of, hey, I saw this, young lady walking into the squadron training office, like she was pretty hot. All of a sudden, the next guy hears it and goes, well, she must be the slut. I mean, it's you're definitely right. Leaders need to get a handle on that stuff. And I think some things are generational. Hopefully, gosh, I hope I'm right. That generationally things get better. I don't know that they do to the scale that they need to.
Yeah, I think it's always getting a little bit better. It's not great, but there's always progress, and I think it's hopeful. We've got companies now that are creating these employee resource groups, and they're talking about diversity and exclusion, equity and inclusion. So there's a lot of progress going on, and of course it's not fast enough, but at least it's going in the right direction. Just kind of have to roll over those people who deny that progress has to happen.
And that's a great point too, since we're talking about business and entrepreneurship today, and that balance of, if you are a business owner or you are somebody of influence in your business, in the company you work for, make sure that you have those groups, those diversity and inclusion groups. Be a part of that conversation. Have an open ear to what's going on in the office. Pay attention. Use your situational awareness. See what's going on and call people on it when somebody's doing something wrong. Yeah. That's the way things get better, is when you have people step up and say, no, this isn't happening in my business. It's not going to happen here. Not going to happen there.
I had one leader, and this made me so sad because I thought he was such a great guy, but he actually told me one time that the morale of the unit, or the morale of the flight, which was his flight, he was the flight
chief.
No, not flight chief. Flight commander? Oh, God, I don't remember. It's like 10,000 years ago. Anyway, he said that that morale was not his responsibility. That he was not concerned with the morale of his flight. And I was like, what? Is that right? I don't. From my learning, I felt like that was wrong.
Yeah, that's wrong, but I can understand why somebody would look at things like that. Like, if you're the leader, your job is to, well, it's more of a manager way of looking at things. Of my job is to make sure everything gets done. Mm-hmm. If you take that step into leadership and management, I think that's when you make the argument of, okay, my job is to make sure everything gets done, but everything gets done better when there's morale.
Yeah.
The quality of the work goes up.
Yes. And excellence in all we do. Hello, excellence in all we do.
Yeah. So if the leaders that are listening, that's, when you have good morale, and you take care of your troops and you make sure that their physical needs and their mental needs and all those are met, those are troops that are probably not as likely to have alcohol related instances or maybe domestic violence or some of those other things that troops get themselves into that as a supervisor or as a young officer, you got to answer to the commander for why they did that. And you weren't there. You don't know why they did it, but they still ask you those questions. Yeah. So you should be able to mitigate some of that by having morale and having a happy, morale filled, everybody gets along to the best of their ability kind of workforce.
Wow. But sounds like rainbows and sunshine, Keith.
Rainbows and sunshine. Yeah. Well, that's the Air Force way. If you didn't know, we aim high where the rainbows
Integrity first, rainbows and sunshine second.
Yeah. Boy, those core values, I don't know about you, but still to this day, those core values are really, big to me. I'm not going to sit here and say I think about them every day, but I think they are really guiding principles in my life because I think they reinforced the way I was raised. I was always told, well, don't tell a lie, right? To tell the truth. Mm-hmm. You might get in trouble and it's going to be painful, but it's not going to be as bad as if you lied. Mm-hmm. So tell the truth, have integrity, do the right thing, serve others. I saw there's plenty of examples in my life of people serving others, with no expectation of anything in return. And then obviously excellence in all you do, right? I mean, if you're not going to try and do it right,
what's the point?
Why are you even trying?
Yes, I tell my son that all the time. I'm like, might as well do it right the first time. Don't waste your time and everyone's time,
Has it soaked in yet?
Oh, hell no. He's 12. Okay. Of course not.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, if you figure it out before I figure it out with my kids, let me know.
Okay.
Let me know
I'll let you
however
know.
You pounded that into their head. Because there's a lot of us need to know. That's a whole other episode right there. How to get your kids to flip the switch on something important in life and figure something out.
Take away their electronics.
Oh, that could do it. Oh, but enough of kids for now. So you are you're an entrepreneur, business owner. Where did that journey start for you? And how did that start?
Easy question. Okay. So this is easy because I feel like a lot of people have the same answer, and it's Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I read that book and it changed the way that I think about money. And my ex-husband read it first, and he was like, I know you don't like money. I know you don't like numbers, but read this. So I did. And there are only a handful of books that actually change your life, but that's one of them. From then on, I knew that I wanted to do some kind of entrepreneurship. I wanted to make money work for me instead of working for money. I knew that I could stay in the Air Force. That's when it happened, was in 2006. That's when I read it. And that's when I got out of the Air Force too. I could have stayed in and done some entrepreneurship, but I didn't really realize that at the time.
Your path there could have been interesting too, given that time period with the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, potential deployments, and the operations tempo. I know is different in different units, but I could have made it more difficult for sure to try and manage two different things.
Well, living in Hawaii, being stationed there, we were considered forward deployed, so we weren't going anywhere. But I know. Poor me.
What a problem.
I
know. Hawaii would be nice, man.
Wah, wah, wah. Poor me. But, what was your question?
How your journey started.
Oh, right. So it started in 2006 with that book. And would you like to hear about all the failed ventures?
You know what? I would, absolutely share with us, because I think that's
fun.
part of the journey.
It is.
You learn more from the failures than maybe call them speed bumps, maybe, but it takes
learning experiences.
Yeah, learning experiences, exactly. I mean, it takes a lot of those to learn different things. I mean, I was writing some courses and stuff for my business this fall, and it seemed like, man, every time I turned around, I was like, well, that didn't work. I don't like that. and that shapes the final project. So go ahead, share with us some of the failures.
Sure. What is the very original pyramid scheme? Because I think that's the one we joined first. Amway.
Okay.
Amway.
Yeah.
I think that, but we only lasted like a month in that, so we didn't waste a whole lot of money. Thank goodness. The next thing was,
those are some interesting business. I think they call them not pyramid schemes. Obviously, multi-level marketing is the key word, I think, these days.
yeah,
And I'll tell you my opinion, and some people are probably going to fry me for saying this. In some ways, it's a business because you invest some money in it to get going.
mm-hmm.
But it's not like starting a business from scratch, which you've done as well.
No. Yeah,
It's they kind of hand you all the tools because you
Yeah.
paid them some money, and then now you got to go out and try and figure some things out.
Yeah.
And the fact that you get paid off of people or you recruit and stuff like that, I'm gonna be careful what I say because there's, even in my own industry, there's real estate companies that kind of operate that same way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like,
and when you're recruiting, when you're operating on recruiting other people to make money off of, there's a lot that has to go into the way that you present yourself and the way that your lifestyle looks from the outside. And we saw that in action a little bit in Hawaii for that 1 month. And then the next venture that we went in on was, there was this nicotine or tobacco cessation hypnotism. Okay. Yeah.
that's interesting.
Left field, right? This guy that we knew, he wanted to invest in, I don't even remember, but he wanted to start a business doing this for people. And so we invested to become partners, and it never happened, of course. So we lost that money. We almost bought probably 2 or 3 different gas stations over the past, like between 2006 and 2016, 2 or 3 gas stations. We almost bought a bouncy house business. We are actually about to sign the sales contract when the seller backed out. Apparently, we made it look too much fun again. And
when you're negotiating for things until that ink is dry in a contract, you got to be real careful about perceptions and what you ask for. And it's kind of the beauty of negotiations. One of the things I love about it.
I remember like tiptoeing around him, like when we were looking at everything and discussing everything. And Jason, my ex-husband, he'd be like, "No, don't ask that. Don't say that."
Yeah.
I don't know these things.
It's almost like looking at houses these days. Everybody has cameras and stuff, and you can be on video, but you're not technically supposed to be recording people. But come on, tell me that some homeowners aren't doing that, right?
Oh,
so
great.
It's almost like when you're shopping for houses these days, I have to tell my clients, like, all right, now you walk in this house and it's hideous, don't say a word. If you walk in this house and it is the one for you, don't say a word.
Oh my gosh.
Wait until we're outside, away from any possible video cameras, because you don't want the homeowner to be illegally recording you.
Right.
And to hear your clients in the kitchen say, "You know what? I love this house."
Right.
And there's differences of prices. So let's just say it's a $400,000 house, and you walk in, you're like, "Wow, this house is." They're asking $400,000. I'd pay $420,000 for this. This is amazing. Let's write the offer.
Yeah, right.
And then they hear that in on video, and they're like, "Shit, I'm not going to take this offer for $400,000. I'm going to counter at $420,000 because I know they'll do it." Exactly. I heard them say it. With technology and stuff like that, you got to be careful. It's the same thing of walking through somebody's business and showing too much interest or too much disinterest or things like that. Got to keep your attitude in check. For us military people, it's probably easier. Just straight faced, eyes forward, like don't show any emotion.
Be stoic.
Be as stoic as you possibly can. Be a statue there. But yeah, you can't. You don't want to. Anytime you're doing negotiations, you don't want to give anybody anything they can feed off of. So
right. Yeah, I can't remember exactly why he backed out, but that was pretty disappointing because we were excited about that one.
It'd be an interesting one. You see those everywhere.
Yeah, and
not necessarily, but I mean, the bounce houses and the inflatables, not necessarily the businesses, but I mean, people see them at parties all the time in summers and stuff.
And it's fascinating who the clients are, because when we were doing all this research for it, we learned that lower income families, they might not be able to afford this essential or that essential, but they're going to pay money to put a bouncy house in their front yard for their kid, no matter what. Like some really fascinating dynamics, socioeconomic dynamics of who will rent a bouncy house. It's just really interesting to me, what people's priorities are. Anyway,
that's interesting. Yeah, I could soak up that information all day long. I think that kind of stuff is fascinating.
It's
Looking
cool.
at who does what and why.
Yeah, we and then I almost partnered with a guy who had a logistics company where he would move cars. So like, the trucks that have multiple cars that they're hauling, he would coordinate those. And so since I have a background in logistics, I was going to bring in some money and some sweat equity and become a partner. And before we we should have known already after we visited one time, and he gave us all of the records from all of his customers, including all of their credit card information. He gave it to us to look over. Just go ahead, no problem. So we're trusted with all this information. I don't think we signed a single thing. And then the second time we saw him, we were communicating more, and we found out that he was paying his rent with the business account, and he was about to be evicted. So, yeah, there was just way too much. And come to find out, he actually started using his customers' credit card numbers after we left.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Talk about dodging a bullet on that one.
Right.
So what, definitely a side question on this, but I think it's valuable because it's business conversation. What other than that, because that's a whole field of red flags right there. What other red flags have you seen out there that somebody should look at if they're looking at buying a business or starting one? Because that's
what red flags? There are so many. Oh, there are so many.
I couldn't agree more. Just kind of curious.
It's hard to pinpoint them because they seem so obvious to me. It's kind of like second nature when you sniff out bullshit, like if you look at listings, like business listings, and you're left wondering a whole lot about how the business actually operates, or who the client or who the business actually sells to. Or, I mean, just there are huge gaping holes of where they're leaving information out, and if you don't go and find out that information, then just do not proceed any further. I mean, it's all about communicating what you need, and if they don't have what you need at first, they should be able to provide it or move on.
In a reasonable time period. I would say probably any question that starts with a how, that in the back of your mind, like you have very serious doubts on, other than like, well, how do you do technical things is one thing, but like, how do they get any business in that location? The location sucks.
How about
the parking sucks. Like, how do they do this? How are they even turning a profit in this location?
How do you make money? That's the question.
Yeah.
Like if they can't answer that, well, what? Like I've actually seen that. Like, how do you actually make money? That's important. That's very important to be able to explain to a buyer.
And I think there's a lot of people that just aren't good on numbers. And you don't need to be an accountant, but I think that there's certain things in business that you should either know, and you could just spit off the top of your head, or be able to look up in a reasonable amount of time. Like, what was your sales goal for this quarter? Did you achieve it?
Dude,
if you've got a store, what are your top 5 selling items and what are your top 5 most profitable items? Like, just simple things like that you should know.
Yeah,
If
definitely.
you own a company that's got 3 services, well, which one's your bread and butter?
Right.
What's your core competency? Like,
right. Yeah.
so,
Capability statement. That's
there's
that's
a lot of
something
things
that's important. Yeah.
that could be an issue. So, skip ahead a little bit. I normally kind of give a chance to kind of spotlight somebody's business at the end, but your business is Gifting with Valor. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about that, because I think that kind of sets up some of the other questions, because it's all like work-life balance and stuff like that. Paints a better picture that way.
Well, I'll actually back up in history a little bit with chronologically from 2006 to 2016. I was bumping along trying to find out how I could be an entrepreneur. And at one point we did flip a house successfully. So that was one success we had. I felt no connection or passion about it. So I didn't care to do it again, even though it was profitable. So 2016 was when I started my first business, and that was MILSO Box. Stood for Military Significant Other Box. And it was a monthly subscription box that was basically a reverse care package for the women who supported our troops. It was supposed to be a romantic connection, so a girlfriend, fiance, or wife, and it was only for women. And I got a little bit of crap for that, because it was only women, and military spouses are also men, which I know because I used to have one. So I definitely know. But
it's a percentages game, right?
The percentages,
male spouses are what, maybe 15%?
If
tops,
that, I don't know.
Tops probably in that ballpark.
Yeah, something like that.
That's not a profitable business, people. If you're trying to cater to the 15%, right?
Right.
Go for the 80%, right? The old 80-20 rule.
Yeah, it's hard enough to get the other ones. So I started that in 2016 and sold that in 2019 to Kristen Miller, who owns it now. And she runs it today, and she's done a fantastic job of keeping it going and growing. Before I sold it, though, the year before that in 2018, I started Gifting with Valor, which is the second business, which is what you were asking about. Essentially, it was a parlay from MILSO Box. And the way that it happened was I had a veteran-owned events and entertainment company come to me and ask if I could create custom gift boxes for a special event that they were having. They were going to be bringing a bunch of VIPs onto a yacht for this brunch. And so we created these brunch gift boxes, and we were able to customize it with the company's logo, but also mix it with the brands of the military spouse or veteran-owned businesses that put their products in there as well. I say put them in there. They get paid, by the way. Everybody gets paid in my situation. So yeah, that's Gifting with Valor. We do custom gift boxes in bulk for organizations that want to show their support for military spouse or veteran entrepreneurs, because those are the only suppliers we use.
Which is awesome, and yet another benefit. So I'll throw the website down to the bottom. We'll keep it going. But if anybody's reaching out, the website's giftingwithvalor.com. Can't mess that up.
Yeah, I
we didn't make the website difficult.
I tried to make it easy.
Yeah, that's pretty easy. Gifting with Valor, as long as you can spell, you're good to go. If not, it'll be in the show notes and all that stuff. So that's what you're doing now. Mm-hmm. How have you found a way to balance what is surely a difficult business thing? Reaching out to the different vendors and setting things up for different people and managing. Would you say 4 or 5 people that work for you now, something like that?
I have 2 1099 employees and then a virtual assistant.
Okay. So managing all that, the people, the products, the negotiations, and then life. You've got a kid, you've got a house to take care of, all that fun stuff that we all have to take care of. So how do you find the balance?
Okay. So I just went through a lot of scheduling and kind of revamping how I look at my schedule with my VA, because I just got my VA, my virtual assistant. I really hired her to be able to protect my time the best way possible so that I can focus on what makes us money. So because I'm the founder and CEO, I get emails constantly all day, and I have to be able to weed through what needs to be prioritized, what needs to be handled now, and then also be able to get done the tasks that actually make money. Those are the tasks that actually have to get done for this business to succeed. So that's what Kristen does. Kristen is also the name of my virtual assistant. Man, they could have given me anyone, but they gave me another Kristen, but that's okay. But that's what she does, is she protects my time. I give her, so I know personally, and I think it takes a lot of humility for someone to sit down and recognize their strengths and weaknesses. But my best parts of the day are from 9 or probably 8 till about 2 o'clock. And at 2 o'clock, I know that my brain does not work as well. And it's time for me to not be at my computer. And so I'll schedule something like this, like a podcast interview, because it uses a different part of my brain that is active, when otherwise in the morning I would just be sitting down doing what I have to do in a rote kind of repetitive, it's a different part of my brain working. But this is something that's interactive, that I like to do, that takes some creativity and entertainment value, so this engages a different part of me. That I have her schedule for the afternoon. Also in the afternoon, she has to make sure I have a bubble for self-care, because I do take care of myself as a priority. I've got bipolar 1 disorder, and I'm very open about it because I want to try to end the stigma as much as I can. And I think by talking about it as openly as I do, that's how I can do that. So what I should be doing with my self-care is working out, eating right, meditating, praying, calling my mom, getting hugs. There are so many different things that you can do spiritually, emotionally, physically, for self-care, for what I've got. And every person is different. Every person's got their own challenges. So whatever self-care or whatever time frame they need to accomplish whatever their challenges are, I think as long as you're aware and realistic, it's possible. And the whole idea that that you can do everything is not true. You can't do everything. You can do everything, just not all at once.
And not all that effectively in some ways. You
have to feed. You have to feed this, and then you have to feed that, and then you have to feed that. You can't do it all at the same time.
Yeah, it's hard to balance some things, because I've had people kind of ask me over the years, like, how do you do all the things you do? Mm-hmm. And I like how you said protecting your time, because I never really looked at it like that, but that's, in a lot of ways, that's what I do. But I do it with my calendar. Mm-hmm. So I use Google Calendar. My wife uses it. I have everything in there color coordinated. It sounds crazy, but when you look at it, it's just like a splash of color across my calendar. Mm-hmm. But if I have something in there for 2 hours, it may not be like a physical appointment. It may just me being in my office working on something. Because like you said, like 8 o'clock to 2 or something, my sweet time is like 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Like that is when because I've already had breakfast. I've already had a couple cups of coffee. I'm fully awake. Because if you catch me before 10 o'clock in the morning, I am not going to be fully functioning, right? It's just like it's like the gas meter going, the speedometer going up. Like I'm slowly getting to functioning speed. We're getting there slowly. About 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, something like that. I'm getting there, but then you get that caffeine crash in the middle of the afternoon, and then sometimes like in the evening, I got more energy. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So, knowing what like works for you and then blocking that time like works for me, and I think it's a similar philosophy. Like I'm protecting my time by knowing that this is what I should be working on here. This is what I should be working on there. And, it gives you the time to focus 100% on what you need here. And then you can go on to the next task and whatever. So interesting way of framing it.
And like also learning different organizational skills has been really valuable too. Like when Kristen came aboard to be my assistant, she showed me how to use the tasks in Google. Have you ever used the tasks?
Yeah.
Okay, now I feel like a fool. You were supposed to say no.
Yeah, I use the tasks, and I use reminders a lot in Google Calendar too. For something I don't want to do, but I don't want to forget. I just go set myself a reminder. Like I got to pick up my kid tomorrow at school. Boom, I'll put a reminder at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I call the school and tell them I'm picking them up and set it all up.
Yeah, and she showed me how you can take an image from your email without even opening the email, right click on it, and then add it to your Google Drive into a specific folder without ever even opening the email.
I don't know that one.
So you can save something to your Google Drive. So, and the reason that she showed me this was because I keep saving things locally and I can't share them with my people if I do that. So I've got to change my habit. So little things like that have been really useful, and just being open to different ideas and different methodologies, I think is really important. And I do have a son, and it's funny because I didn't mention him at all in my day. And it's because, so I have an ex and he has our child on Monday and Tuesday. And for some reason, I get most of my work done on Monday and Tuesday. And then Wednesday and Thursday, I do work as well, but you're
not as effective with your work? Or
I'm not as effective.
Maybe?
I'm not kidding. Like I know in the back of my mind that at any moment I have to go and get my kid if there's a problem at school or if he's sick or, he's in the back of my mind. I'm mom, I have to be ready to be mom at any moment from Wednesday to Friday. And then of course on the weekends when I have him. So,
it really messes with you a lot to have when your kid is at home. Because last year during the pandemic, both of my kids did school from home. They were right outside my office. I swear it drove me absolutely insane. We had to come up with all kinds of tools to like handle things. I put a whiteboard out there. I'm like, look, stop knocking on my door. Stop coming to my office. If you have a question, just write it on the whiteboard.
I just have to tell you this one thing.
My little guy would come in here and he'd be bugging the heck out of me, Be like, what do you want, man? Oh, I just wanted to tell you I love you, Dad. Like, thanks.
Now you feel like an asshole.
That's sweet. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I'm like, now I have to go back to my email that I was just typing and remember what it was I was even thinking. It's going to take me 4 minutes or 5 minutes to figure out what brainwave I was on when I was so...
Well, if you were me...
distracted by a little guy,
If you were me, you could get away with, oh, my son just came and told me he loved me. That's so sweet. Anyway, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, they've done it on my podcast before, too. I wish I could remember what episode it was. But my wife was gone, and both of them were in the room behind me, and he kept like just those little knocks on the door, and I'm like trying to bite my tongue, and I'm like, what is he doing? Like, I knew it was him, because my oldest is quiet, respectful. My youngest is like a Tasmanian devil sometimes at home. And then all of a sudden I hear like pieces of paper coming to the door, and I kind of glance back, and they're just like sliding under the door like every 3 minutes. Turns out it was just little like love notes from him. He was like, I love you, Dad. When are you going to be done? I want a snack. I love you, Dad. Like,
oh my gosh.
But I didn't know because I didn't want to because I was doing it live. It was one of my live episodes. So I'm just like, glanced out of the corner of my eye, like, what is going on over here? What is he doing?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to just like turn around and be like, what are you doing, man? Like,
It's got to be nerve-wracking too. Like,
it was a little bit, but I'm like, you know what? I'm a parent. A lot of listeners are parents. Everybody totally gets it.
Yeah.
It is
Plus,
what it
he'd be
is.
screaming if there was really a problem.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
my kids are not that young that being out there was a problem.
Yeah.
God, I was
That
only on the
would be nice.
podcast for a few minutes, and my wife was somewhere. I don't know. She probably wasn't gone. I don't know where she was at, but yeah, I mean, they're old enough they make their own sandwiches.
Yeah.
And feed themselves lunch and stuff like that. But it was like,
He's
a little sweetheart like that.
Yeah.
He's actually almost 9, so I mean, it gives you an idea. And his brother's older than him, so it's just like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
He's got the
That
attention.
reminds me so much of our. We had a foster daughter for 2.5 years. We had a foster daughter for 2.5 years, and she used to do things like that all the time. She would bring just anything she could write, color, glitter, stamp, whatever artsy thing she could do to make I love you on something, she would give it to me. And it was like all the time. And it was so sweet. But yeah.
Yeah, I gotta love those artistic children because that is totally my youngest. My oldest is like me, very logical brained.
Yes.
My youngest is very creative, and he just does things like he'll just draw on it on anything. Like
Same
things
thing.
that he's not supposed to draw on, and you're like, why did you do that? You're so infuriating. It's like that's why he's not allowed in my office most of the time. I'm like, you know how mad I'm gonna be if I have a contract sitting out or something, and all of a sudden there's sketches drawn on it or something.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't be good. Well, luckily I work mostly digital, but it's that's the challenge, right? That's that work-life balance. Like, how do you balance all that,
All of 2020, me and Lawson hanging out at the house. Just, he was in his office. I was in my office. I call it his office, but it was a sunroom. But that was his space, and he would come into my space very often. And I just have to tell you this one thing. Okay.
Right. Something you probably didn't care about.
Yeah.
It's like, you got to pretend like you care. But
of course.
My youngest was in here the other day. He's got this thing now for volcanoes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't know much about volcanoes at all. And he's over here.
You're going to pretend like they're fascinating.
Yeah, I was like, he flips open this book. He goes, you see this kind of volcano? This is a such and such. And this do you know how this happens? And I was like, I have no idea how that happens with this volcano. Well, it's what happens when a volcano caves in on itself. And I was like, okay. He's like, isn't that so cool? And I'm like, yeah, dude, that's awesome. And I'm like, that's a piece of information I never wanted or cared to know in my entire life. But it made him happy.
Yeah.
To seem like I was interested.
And he's learning stuff.
Yep. At least my show isn't watched by little kids because it would ruin everything. They'd be like, my parents don't like anything I do.
He doesn't read my love notes.
I've kept more than my fair share of them.
Oh, I have to.
But tell you what, my kids have gotten mad a few times when they've caught me throwing things away. Why aren't you keeping that? I can't keep everything you make in school and everything you make here at home. Like, there's just no possible way, okay? Right. We're not trying to fill this house up with papers.
Right.
This is not an episode of Hoarders going on here. So
paper after paper.
Yep. So with this, back to this balance stuff, because kids are a big part of it. Kids, life, chores, all this stuff, right? All this. What has there been any tools other than your VA that have been helpful for you? Tech tools or things like that?
When I was first starting, and throughout all of it, my ex-husband was a huge, huge factor as support. He was amazing especially when I was getting my first business off the ground. I was working full-time for a logistics company. And then after 5 o'clock, I would stay in the office with the owner's knowledge, and I would work until like 11 or 12, and then come home and redo the same thing at 6 a.m. the next morning. And I was doing that for a few weeks. And then of course, after the business started, I was still super busy. So he stood up and helped out just immensely. And I think without him, it would have been a much, much bigger challenge, because he took over the laundry, and he took on some household stuff that otherwise I would feel obligated to do. And so that was really useful. And let's see, any other tools for balance? Oh man, for balance. Trying to keep everything off of the weekend for sure, so that you can focus on friends and family on the weekend. I don't work on the weekends unless I absolutely have to.
That must be nice. I've never had that luxury.
Oh, I know. You
No,
poor thing.
no. Well, people ask me about that all the time, and I'm like, well, in some businesses, you just don't get weekends.
That
But what I do,
sucks.
I just schedule a whole afternoon off in the middle of the week if I want.
I do too.
I schedule the I schedule the holidays off, like my calendar. Like, I don't go any shopping, but
Yeah.
this is in November. Thanksgiving was last week, so like I don't do Black Friday shopping. Never do, never have. Not playing that, especially during a pandemic, right?
Yeah.
But that's blocked off of my calendar. Same thing with the day after Christmas. I don't want to go do anything the day after Christmas or the day after Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta recover from all the food I ate. Like,
right.
But so it's just for me, it's just like blocking that time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of have worked the same amount of hours in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I don't have like 2 consecutive days off in a row.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
just making it work for you.
Yeah. And I think something that I try to do too to make the balance work is that, see, I'm all about people, about my connections with people. And I think that's really what matters in life. And that's why we're here, is to be connected. And so whenever I'm with someone, like a family member or a friend, I just try to dedicate 100% of my attention to them and make sure that they know how valuable I take their time, or consider their time. And, I talk to my kid and just say really loving things and make sure that our time spent together is as fun as it can be, or if we're just going to chill on the couch and he play video games and I play and I lose at Rocket League with him, then that's what it is. It doesn't have to be anything big, but that I think helps me with balance, because I know that I've done my part to put in my time with each person that I want to invest my time with.
Right, you gotta have that quality of lifetime with your family and friends. But your business also requires amount of time. That's why I look at this balance idea is not it's not a perfect balance.
Mm-hmm.
Your balance, my balance is totally different.
Well, connections are true in business too. I just I just talked to a fulfillment center because we're getting into orders that are too big for us to handle. And so it's in Nashville, which is an 8-hour drive, 8 or 9 hour drive. So I decided to go ahead and go out there and actually meet the owner, because I wanted to put a face with my name and I wanted him to get a feel for me. And I wanted him to feel like he was a part of the Gifting with Valor success team. And so I wanted to be able to actually connect with that gentleman. And so I took that time to do it instead of doing a bunch of other things over my email, because I knew how important that relationship was going to be.
It's a lot of trust you put into somebody, to have a big part or a small part in your business. The same thing with the virtual assistant, right? Just little tasks to get off your plate, but they add up. It's a big part of your business. It's a lot of trust.
Huge. It's huge because presentation for us, gift boxes, when you think about opening a gift box and you think about the presentation that you see inside, we're going to be giving that to somebody else to handle. Yeah, you're right. That's huge. Like that does take a lot of trust. And and this is pretty cool. This fulfillment center that we're using, they actually employ people with disabilities. So they are the ones who do the fulfillment.
Nice.
Yeah, it's
That's
pretty
awesome.
cool. Yeah.
That's awesome. Could definitely get behind an organization that goes out of the way to hire people with disabilities, because you know it's got to be tough to have a disability.
But it makes
and
so much sense for this kind of work too. It does. It makes so much sense for it, because it is the same rote, or the same rote actions, and then you get this beautiful result, and the accomplishment that they're going to have. That's going to be really cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So has there been any, organizations or coaches or anybody, along your journey that's helped kind of inspire you to get to balance?
For sure. I've been working with the Lions Pride out of Washington State. And have you ever heard of them, the Lions Pride?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Nope, but I just made a little note in my note thing.
Yeah,
Check that out.
Yeah, check it out. The Lions Pride. The leader is Bill Watkins. And it's okay. So what he does is he offers workshops every Thursday for anyone to come in and work on a one-page business plan with him, with a group on Zoom for free every Thursday. So every Thursday you work on a different part of the one-page business plan. And so that's how I started working with them, because I had to revamp my business model at the beginning of the summer. And I knew I didn't want to revamp my whole business plan. I just wanted to do a one-page business plan that I could refer to pretty quickly and refer to throughout the year. So I started working with him on that. And then what they have is kind of like a CEO circle as well. And you pay into that to be a part of it. But they also offer scholarships to veteran-owned businesses. So I was able to get a scholarship to be in that CEO circle. So
nice.
Yeah. So I got a mentor that I meet with every month. And I've got other supporters in that group that I work with. And then on each Friday, we have Friday live coaching, where we get together and talk about our accomplishments, what we're having troubles with. And a lot of it is resolved right then and there on the call with each other. It's really neat. It's just bringing some brains together to help each other out.
That's nice. I'm in kind of a similar group through Facebook, through the Vetrepreneur Tribe. And
oh, cool.
And then there's 15,000 people in that. But there's a smaller group that we kind of pay as mastermind kind of group. We meet every Thursday, called the Warrior Council. And I've kind of gotten that too. Like, sometimes it's not even my business. Sometimes I don't really have much to report. We kind of meet, so what's going on in your business? Do you have any needs, any wants, anything you're looking for? Sometimes I don't. But it's amazing what other people do in other types of industries. They're having supply chain issues or product quality issues or whatever. And to hear their problems and find other people giving them advice and solutions or pointing them in the right direction, it's so cool. It's so powerful to have all these other brains in a room. And sometimes you just sit back and you're like, oh wow, that's, I don't have to worry about physical inventory in my business. I mean, well, houses are physical inventory, but I don't have to worry about, we're going to make a run of 10,000 of these little toys,
right?
And there's a quality issue with it or something, like, just making weird examples, but I don't have to deal with that in my business. Mine's so much more different. So it's really cool to kind of, you get to pick other people's brains without even asking them a question sometimes. Just sit there and soak it all up.
Yeah.
And so awesome if you got something like that.
I love resources and sharing resources, because there are so many available. When I first started my first business, I had no idea how many resources were out there, and for free. They're free. And people don't take advantage of them. And it's like, have you ever heard of Bunker Labs?
Oh yeah. I went to a Bunker Labs event here, I think 2 years ago, something like that. That's a great one. I've got it on my website too, the Battle Buddy
good.
podcast website. I've got trying to always dust that off, a bunch of resource pages of free information and what I know about it. And, I usually only put things on there if I know somebody who's gone through something and can, give me
Vouch
a good
for it.
testimonial, vouch for something being serious.
What about the Institute of Veteran and Military Families, IVMF, from Syracuse University?
Yes. Okay, yep.
Yeah.
Yep, I've got that on there too.
They're great. I did the VY.
It's hard to remember that with all the acronym, all the letters in there.
Yeah, IVMF. I should have just said IVMF. I did the Veteran Edge twice, I think, and VY's cohorts. So, so those were good. And Bunker Labs, man, first time I found out about Bunker Labs, I was like, where have you been all my life? And then also, there was something called the SBTDC. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not heard of that one either.
Oh my gosh, let me pull
Well, you're going to make me add all kinds of stuff to my website this week.
Dude,
which is good because it's a resource for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, I love this stuff.
I'm always looking for resources for the website. I mean, that's part of my vision for this podcast is not only for people to listen or watch the show and hear stuff, but also to have the website they can go to and find great resources and information and nuggets of stuff on there in all kinds of different categories, from personal finance to business to VA medical stuff. Okay. It's all work in progress. So anybody who's listening, if you have something that would be a great addition to the website, just reach out to me. I am all ears for whatever's valuable to the community.
So this is just for North Carolina, unfortunately. But there is the Small Business and Technology Development Center, the SBTDC. And literally, I can ask a question and there is a knowledgeable business person who just answers my question. Nice. I can't even remember a good example. Oh, I think I said something like, I'm looking for flex storage space, like 500 square feet, something really small, but I need storage. And so he actually did a little search and found, and one of the things was that I needed the place to be able to accept packages for me. And so I've been looking all over the place, looking on Craigslist for like wayward random places and, having no luck. And he came up with a storage facility that I could just get a storage unit and then they put my stuff in the storage unit when it arrives to the storage place. I'm like, wow, you just saved me like $1,000 a month or something. Because that's
especially if they're putting it in there and you don't have to pay somebody to go over there every single time a package is delivered and deal with it.
Yeah. Just awesome. Great stuff like that. He gave me a wonderful cost projection calculator. What else? Oh, he introduced me to my insurance broker.
See, I was just gonna say that's the power of connections. Like not only the resources, but the people, because you never know what one person could do to impact your business or your time. Because obviously, we're talking about balance here.
And I have to mention one more North Carolina resource because I'm a board member of the North Carolina Veteran Business Association.
Well, then you should probably. You should probably leave that nugget there. Yeah.
Yes. It's ncvetbiz.org. ncvetbiz.org. And
I'll have that link in the description too. Don't worry. We'll put that there.
Okay, cool.
You can make all your other board members happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll be
happy.
I'll
make sure I note that as well. So.
Okay, good.
So last question I got for you here is any advice you have for those business owners that are out there who are trying to kind of find where that optimal point is for them, how they find their balance?
How they find their balance. How do they find it? That's a tough one. I think they'll feel it in their body and in their mindset. You know, if you're the kind of person who always feels like they're running, then you're not balanced. You know, my sister, for example, she says yes to too much. So she's constantly worried and stressed and running around. And seeing her do that has taught me a lot so that I can balance my time a little bit better. So I think knowing what kind of mind frame you have and also what your body is telling you is really important. Because if you listen to your body, it will tell you.
You know, I like that because I was kind of that guy, like your sister, that I would say
Really?
yes to everything. And in some ways I am still, but I have learned over this last year of if it's going to cause any kind of stress, why am I doing it? Why do I put myself through that? I was my HOA president for 6 years, and it got to the point where I had no desire to do it anymore. I would have gave it up to anybody, and somebody did take over the position, and I'm still kind of co-treasurer. But you know, we'll see how long that lasts.
Well,
but it's like if it stressed me out so much.
yeah.
Anytime I was doing anything for that position, I had gotten to the point. It was probably about 5 years into the 6 where I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm mentally checked out. Somebody needs to take over at this point. I am not doing this position and it's not good. You know, I'll get things done, but I don't have a passion. You know, I don't have any kind of passion for it. Somebody else has to take over. Same thing with school and other things. Like, nope, something else has to give. I have to get rid of this stress in my life because when I'm stressed, it affects my family. It affects my time because I'm spending too much time doing that versus hanging out with my family. And it's all about quality of life.
That's another thing is your priorities. And so what I had for a long time on my mirror was I wrote my health, my family, my business. And in that order, those are my priorities. I can't take care of my family and I can't take care of my business if I'm not healthy. So I have to take care of my health first. Then I have to take care of my family or I can't function to take care of my business because I'm emotionally tied to them.
Absolutely. I could not agree more.
So
that kind of reminds me of when I was in the Air Force. I had a flight chief tell me, because being security forces, he's like, don't speed to get to the call. Right? I mean, you got to go as fast as you got to go to get there, but don't do reckless things. Because if you crash the patrol car, go into the scene of another accident, you are now useless. You are now another accident for people to respond to.
Right.
And I've thought about this so many times in my life. It's like, slow down, realize what's important.
And don't become a liability.
Exactly. Get to the finish line. You know, because, I mean, you're not going to finish it yet. So that's a really good one. I think that's a great nugget there for people is prioritize everything. And I don't some people might have a different way of prioritizing it. Mine would be the same way. If you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of your family, you can't take care of business.
Yeah.
And just having it somewhere.
And just having it somewhere where it will constantly remind you to keep those perspective or keep that perspective in mind and those priorities in mind. Like I said, it was on my mirror in my bathroom. So every time I brushed my teeth, I looked at it.
Yeah. How about this one? Put it with your goals.
Yeah.
Your goals that should be written down, right? I mean, we should all be doing that. We all probably need to do a better job of it, but
yeah, your goals as well. But honestly, I think priorities are even better because they're almost like, you know, that integrity, first service, before self, excellence, and all you do. They're guiding posts. And if you feel like you're aligned with it, then you're probably balanced. And another way that you can do that is if you do look at your goals and you say, am I doing this or am I doing this to accomplish a goal? Or is this taking me anywhere close to this goal? And if it's not, then why am I doing it? Like
exactly.
You said,
maybe at the top of the sheet, here's my priorities, here's my goals. And when you write those goals, reflect, where does this fit on there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a great nugget of information to keep people on balance, because I think, like I said earlier, it's different for everybody. Some
Mm-hmm.
people need more time to take care of themselves, and maybe they don't even want to have a business, right? They just got to take
Mm-hmm.
care of themselves so they can go to work and collect their paycheck.
Yeah.
If you're a business owner, you're going to have to put a little bit more time, right? More time has to go into that bucket. So you need to make that other time count more.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, I think it was your ex-husband, you said, took on things like doing laundry. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
was a huge one too of, rely on the people around you. I've been going to school for the last 3 years, and, um, luckily I am down to like two more things until I get my bachelor's degree in a couple weeks. But yeah, finally
Congratulations.
there. Thank you. It's unbelievable. I actually turned a couple of things in today, only down to a couple small things left to wrap up in the final. So,
Wow.
but I've been telling my kids, like, I've been trying to train them to do chores around the house, and they get so mad. And they're like, "Why do we have to do so many chores?" And I said, "Well, because when you get older, you're going to have to do them in your own house, so you better know how to do them." But I was like, "You need to pull some weight in this house.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to do stuff. Your mom's got a business. I got a business. I got school. We need your help."
We call it contributing to the family chores. Contributing to the family.
Exactly.
You're a part of it. You can work with us.
Yeah, you're old enough now. Kids can do a lot of chores. They may not do them well.
Yeah, no, God, no.
but they can do them. Don't
And it
want to see
takes
my kids folding skills.
everything in me to not go behind them and fix everything, but you can't because it makes it worse, apparently.
Yeah. Well, that is what it is. But yeah, that's darn good way of looking at it. I mean, you're part of the family. You got to contribute to it. I never really kind of put it in that perspective, but that's exactly what I've been telling my kids.
Unless they want to start paying rent. I mean, that's cool too.
Yeah, well, my kids think they have a brilliant business plan. They don't have any products or services, but they've got a name picked out. And
that's all you need.
There's something in my life must be rubbing off on them. They want to be entrepreneurs and business owners, and
yeah.
And I was telling them, like, I'm more of a business owner than an entrepreneur. I haven't started multiple businesses, but whatever, it's rubbing off on them. They're thinking in that direction. But I give them a hard time all the time. I'm like, you don't have a product or service, you don't have a business. But I will. Right. Like, okay, just go find that problem to solve.
Exactly. You just have to find a problem to solve.
Yeah, it's like you got the name. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
Just got to find the problem. So
that's right.
But anyway, Lindsay, I appreciate you stopping by and spend a little over an hour with me talking about this. And, I hope, when people watch and listen, they can pick up some good nuggets of information to kind of balance out their life, whatever that looks like for them,
Absolutely.
And, so they can kind of be more effective on both fronts, business and at home.
Yeah.
So
I just do it 100%, whatever you're doing.
Excellence in all you do, right?
Excellence in all you do. That's all you can do.
It comes back again.
That's right. That. Yes.
That's it. You should leave the show with an air power right there.
Hell yeah. Wait, no. Let's go with the real motto of the Air Force. Safety first.
Safety first. Yeah.
That was always what they would say. And I was like, man, you're ruining it. Not Air Force should not be safety first. That's so lame. Although it's important, but it's lame.
Yeah. Sometimes I think that went right out the window, though. That's the funny thing. Everybody wants to make fun of the Air Force for being the smart people in the military club, if you will. And it's like, boy, there were some idiots, too. I mean,
they were everywhere.
There were some morons. I hate to say it, but there were some smart people in the Army, too. So I'm sure, same with the Marines and the Navy. Space Force, I don't know about. I haven't met anybody in the Space Force yet, so I will reserve my judgment for later.
There you go.
The newest addition to the family, if we want to claim them yet. I don't know. Can we do that yet? I guess we can.
I have not started claiming them yet. No.
Yeah. I mean, they're kind of still in diapers on the branch timeline. So anyway, I appreciate it, Lindsay. Once again, everybody, you can go to giftingwithvalor.com. You can go check her out there. Reach out to her if you need something for your business or need anything else. That's where you can find her. And then I'll have all the other things in the show notes. So appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yep, no problem.
It's been fun.